Your next promotion is just the beginning, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 197. Today's episode is about that ultimate quest for meaning and purpose in our life. And is our promotion something that actually gets us closer to finding more meaning and purpose? And I'd like to offer that it is. So let's just dive into today's episode where I show you the connection between your next promotion and how it both does create meaning and purpose and how it doesn't at all. All right, let's get started. Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms. Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited to be here with you again this week. Today's episode is sponsored by the goddess Abundanita, prosperity. The universe is pouring its abundance out to you. Be open to receiving. Last week, I introduced that I'll be drawing a different oracle card for the beginning of all my podcast episodes. This is something I've been doing inside of my VIP Leadership Table program, and it has been working remarkably well, not only to remind the women inside that program of their true abundance and greatness and wisdom and everything that is inside them intuitively, that is guiding them every single day, but also it has helped call in other guides to guide us along our path. And that is really what I'm going to be talking about in today's episode. So we have a sub-sponsor for today's episode, which is my clients. And actually, my clients are the sponsor for every single episode. And if you're wondering who my clients are, in some ways that's you, my listeners. But I am more directly influenced by the people who actually connect with me and the women that I coach every single week. That is how and why I created everything that I teach. That is how I created my book. And that is how I come up with ideas and teachings for this podcast every single week. And this past week, I did a Strengths Finder training. So Gallup Strengths Finder, discover your strengths, right? You know, on the surface, this should be a pretty simple training. We're going to talk about our top 5 strengths and really kind of dive into how we can either utilize them more or strengthen and grow those, or use those strengths to strengthen and grow our weaknesses. And I have taught this training for, I don't know, every incoming client to that program for the past 3 years. And this is the first time that that training ended with tears. And I have had lots of tears in my coaching, many, many tears. I have had many women reach out to me with the feeling of, you know, maybe I should hire a therapist, or perhaps I need a life coach instead of a career coach or a marriage coach or a weight loss coach or all of those things. And they keep coming back to me because in a lot of ways, I am all of those things. And the work that I'm teaching is uncovering other parts of yourself that are not in alignment. And especially when we can get our career in alignment, we start to see other areas that we want to bring more abundance to. So I share the fact of the tears, not to shame or create any further anxiety for the people who aren't feeling like they're utilizing their strengths and able to really connect and grow in the leadership way that they want to. But to share with you that it is so important to know and to release what we're feeling. That feeling of exhaustion and I can't keep running anymore. and why isn't this working? And I have tried everything, Stacy, and it still feels so hard. And to have a space where that is welcome and owned and honored, and to have other women who on every single call are sort of dealing with the same things. They take 2 steps forward and 1 step back consistently. To have a space like that where you are around really, really strong, powerful women who are doing very big, hard things, to be able to just sit with others and to just say, man, this is hard. To me, that's priceless. To me, that is worth any amount of money that I could put into any kind of program. If I could feel that connected with really powerful women, I'm going to do it all day, every single day. So I want to honor them. I want us to talk about the magical women inside of the leadership table who are just up to really big, hard things, and how they're already making that impact just by showing up. So today's podcast episode is inspired by them. And also it made me think about answering the question for you, which is, what is all this for? What's the point? You know, last week I talked a little bit about how your next promotion is not about you. That kind of alludes to the point. I was a little bit fiery last week and talked about thinking that your next promotion is all about you is selfish. And I realized to some people that could feel very harsh, and to some people that could feel like a eye-opener, an awakening, just the push that they needed to kind of go forward. And in today's episode, I kind of want to approach it from the opposite, which is, what is meaning? And how do I define meaning? And how have I created meaning in my life and in my personal career up until this point? And also, how have my clients created that meaning for themselves? It both has to do with success and also the lack of success. And that is how we find that balance and that place of meaning and ultimately happiness in our lives. Because I have seen women come to my calls in tears. I leave the calls in tears. And 6 months later, they're a changed woman, right? This is part of that transformation. This is part of that shift, to be able to go for big things and to leave at the end of the day as a changed woman, as an elevated version of ourselves. I'm going to break this down into 2 specific categories, and I'm sure there's lots and lots of ways and research around meaning and happiness and how we create that for ourselves. But for today's podcast episode, I'm going to talk about 2 different areas that I have found personally have created a tremendous amount of meaning for myself. And the first place where I have found meaning is in spirituality. And I know that a lot of folks feel this way because that's why we have so many churchgoers, right? That is why we have so many women who go on spiritual quests to try and find themselves, to take a retreat, to learn meditation, to go on walks in the woods, right? To connect with nature, to connect with something higher than ourselves. And what happens for us when we feel unsettled, when we feel like our life does not have meaning, it is because we are too connected to the earth. We're too connected to the world and our humanness. One of my amazing mentors and friends, Tracy Litt, she shares that we are all spiritual beings in a human form. That we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Whereas every single day, many of us, when we feel like we're struggling to find meaning, it's because we're acting as human beings trying to search for spirituality. And what I love so much about the way that Tracy puts this is that she's saying we're spiritual to begin with. That's just who we are. We're worthy. we are capable of doing anything that we want, that we're capable of having abundance in our lives and freedom and meaning at all points at any given time. Are we capable of that because we are worthy, because we were born with that inherent worthiness? And so often our humanness gets in the way of that. So here's the funny thing. Getting a promotion is a human experience. It is the accolades of success. It is that certificate, that badge of honor that says we are worthy. We have earned our right to worthiness. And then we get that badge and we feel like shit. And I think that's sort of what was coming up for these women is like, this reality that even if they get the promotion, they're still going to feel like crap. Right? Like, what's it all for? What's the point? I have this funny thing that happens for the women that I work with. And I'm telling you this because these women work with me for years. And this involves a renewal every 6 months of participating, of paying more money for years, year after year after year. And the reason is because of this, because of what I'm about to share with you. Our human experience of getting a promotion does not give us meaning. And so what we find, the women that I work for, we detach the meaning from the promotion. And so then therefore, when they get the promotion, it's like, well, yeah, of course, because I'm worth it. I'm worthy. I don't need your accolades anymore. When they get laid off, they don't care as much. Of course, it's hard and it doesn't feel good, but they don't have that desire to like shut down and to feel unworthy because somebody laid them off, because they have separated their inherent worthiness from their promotion. But if we don't go for the promotion, what we're doing is we're living in unworthiness. So we're actually saying we're not worth it by not going for the promotion. So all of the peeling off the onion, all the work that I'm doing inside the leadership table with my clients is we're working to kind of peel that back. We're going for the promotion and then the tears come out. They're like, this is so hard. Why am I struggling? Why do I not feel accepted? I'm like, yes, but none of those feelings would have come up for you if you just sat at your desk and did your job. You would just sort of feel like this low-level yuckiness. But when we go for something really big, we really see what we're made of, which is worthiness. You see where I'm going? We are spiritual beings living in a human body. We are ultimately spiritual beings who are capable of doing anything in this world. And we don't need accolades and we don't need approval from others. But if we don't go for that promotion, if we don't put ourselves out there, if we don't schedule those 15-minute ally meetings, if we don't ask for that raise, then what we're doing is we're just saying, it doesn't matter. My pursuit of greatness doesn't matter. And I say the opposite. I say that it does. Speaking of needing like this reminder, this unveiling over and over and over again, there was a conversation with the women inside of our private Slack channel. And one of the women just joined the program and she was saying, oh, this is such a perfect opportunity for me to work with Stacy and with all of you because I have a new boss and we just got a new CEO at our organization. And I have a really great relationship with my previous boss and all of this change is happening at my organization. And so I want to capitalize on that. Awesome. This is why most people join my programs is because something big is happening at their organization. But again, a human experience, something human is happening. And then one of the clients who I've been working with for over 3 years, she responded, there is never a time in my life where I don't need Stacy's advice and counsel. And she has come to decide that that is just true. And that is not because she's not worthy and can't figure it out on her own, because of course she can, but because she is worthy, because she has put herself into a room in a situation where she wants to constantly be reminded of her greatness and what's possible and what else is out there. And so when we're living in that human experience, we're going to feel a little off. We're going to feel like, why isn't it working? Why aren't people accepting me? Why does this feel so hard? Right? But when we're reminded of the fact that we are a spiritual person, that we are a spiritual being, then we understand, oh, this is about something bigger than me. That is when we create that meaning. And so we challenge ourselves, we do hard things. And this has been such a big experience for me in my career and growing my career. And when I feel most frustrated, it's because I am looking and living in a human experience and I'm not realizing the bigger picture. The second way that I want to look at this is I was listening to an interview with Arthur Brooks and Oprah Winfrey on their joint book that just came out, I think, in the last weeks, which is Build the Life You Want, the Art and Science of Getting Happier. And at the beginning of this interview, Arthur Brooks, who is a Harvard professor and studies happiness and what creates happiness and meaning in our life, or actually what creates happiness. And then one of the ways that happiness is created is through having meaning, right? Through having purpose. And then he goes on to talk about how we create meaning and purpose. But this one line stood out to me where I just said, yes, that is it. That is how I have created so much meaning and purpose in my life, which then in turn has created so much happiness for me, so much happiness in my life. He said that the secret to happiness is teaching about happiness. The secret to happiness is teaching about happiness. And I was like, yes, that is 150% true. That has been ultimately my complete and total experience. So the second half of this podcast episode, I want to offer to you, how are you sharing about your experience pursuing leadership? Are you sharing that experience with others? The third piece of my work is thought leadership. I give women the opportunity to share their learnings as a leader with the world, to give back, right? And so many of the women, that's ultimately what they want to do, is be on a board, be a mentor, be on panels. Some of them have started podcasts, and that can be seen as an after effect. Like once I have found myself, once I have discovered how to succeed in executive leadership, then I will give back by teaching. But I'd like to say the opposite. And so the other piece that I teach is that we start to do that now in our conversations. So if you believe that you're inherently worthy, then you schedule the 15-minute ally meetings. You show up as a peer with another leader at your organization 2 levels above you. You act as this Harvard professor, as this student of meaning, of happiness, of leadership. You absorb information. You take it in. You put it into practice. You become this ultimate student, and then ultimately you become the teacher of that. For me, writing my book was such a profound experience for me in terms of meaning. And everything about that experience had to do with building up to writing the book. It had to do with the points when I decided that I wasn't going to write the book. It had to do with the places where I decided that it wasn't good enough. And then I decided that, you know what? It is good enough. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm not going to be a perfectionist. I just need to try, right? I just need to share. And when I look back at that experience and when I think, how did this book create meaning? It's not the human component of it, the book itself. It is the fact that I did it, the process to get there. So again, it is about what are you learning along the way? And then how can you begin to share that experience with others? We can't talk about our technical expertise without the meaning behind our technical expertise. It won't inspire anyone, right? And it doesn't give us meaning. We just sort of look at it and we're like, yeah, I'm an expert in that field. But why does it matter that you're an expert in that field? Whose lives are you changing because you're an expert in that field? Start to share that with other people. One of the ways that we talk about how to get promoted is to advocate for yourself. And I say we because that's the greater women's leadership community says you need to advocate for yourself. And a lot of women interpret that as talking about your accomplishments and all these great things that you've done. But you know what? You feel shallow doing that because it doesn't create meaning. It doesn't feel like it has purpose to it. So either you don't do it or you suck it up and you do it anyway, but it doesn't feel good. And the alternative that I teach is sharing about our process, sharing what we're learning, how we got here, how we make decisions, how we think about big problems. When we start to do that, then we create meaning for ourselves. We're like, wow, I am doing something more than just this job. Another thing that is so important to realize is that when you are truly yourself, and this is another thing that a lot of people tell you is to be authentic, right? But when you are really yourself and what is ourselves, which is our own personal experience, nobody else has that. We are in a lane by ourselves. So that is when our pool of competition gets very, very small. That is when it really does become about who you know, because people have to actually know you. And so if you have that network built up, then and through one-on-one conversations, then great, those people will be your next best opportunity. But you can also do that through a larger platform through thought leadership. You can also do that by sharing your ideas, sharing what matters to you, being on podcast interviews, being on panels, offering up your advice through your own personal experience, right? Because you're worthy. Your experience, your unique journey to executive leadership matters. There was a panel that I did 2 weeks ago, and definitely check it out, stacymayer.com/supernatural, where I interviewed 3 of my VIP clients where we were talking about their journey to executive leadership and how they created supernatural leaps in their career. And one of the women on the panel has repeatedly said no to me. Whenever I've offered, I do lots of interviews, public interviews. Some of the work that I do is giving women the platform to be able to share their thought leadership. So whether that's on LinkedIn, on my podcast, or in, these types of panel discussions. And I'll be doing more of that for my clients. Oh, and I also create a speaker kit for them, and they end up speaking on even larger panels. So there's lots of ways that we become this presenter, this sharer of ideas in terms of our own thought leadership. And she always tells me no, and it's fine. I just keep asking. And I knew when she's ready, she will say yes. But one of the things that was very remarkable for her is because this time she said yes, and it was easy, right? She was like, wow, I was just sharing from my experience, and I guess it helped, right? I guess people found that useful. But the voice inside her says, oh, my experience isn't enough. What I've accomplished isn't enough. And so the reason that we're holding back from even sharing and having a 15-minute ally meeting with another executive is because we feel like we don't have enough to bring to the table. We don't have enough to bring to the conversation. And that's bullshit. Of course you do. Of course you do. And if you're not sure what that is, then get in my program and let me coach you personally. That's another thing that I've recently transitioned in my career is really wanting to give women these tools. And so I'm doing a ton more one-on-one coaching right now. So if you've wanted to work with me personally and really get that mishmash of life coaching, therapy, career coaching. Another thing I said, weight loss coaching, marriage counseling. I have had women in my programs lose 50 pounds. Several of them, actually, they got their promotions and they also lost 50 pounds because they got their promotion by creating meaning, right? They created that meaning for themselves. And then they basically just said, what else? What else is possible? So today's episode is meant to give you both practical tools, but also to show you if you don't have meaning, it's not something that you go out and get. It's something that you just start to let evolve, right? Through the act of doing hard things, through the act of going for that promotion, you start to realize it's not about the promotion, right? That's the tears. The tears are like, this is a bunch of bullshit that I've been living in this box for 40 years, right? This human meat suit, as some people call it, right? Oh my gosh, that's the tears. We're finally seeing that we're a spiritual being having a human experience. And so then we can tap into that spirituality and we can say, oh, how can I give back? What is my learning? I am worthy, right? Who do I need to connect with around here? And it starts with being in a group of women that are like you, that are all on that same path, right? Having that community of support, having that guidance from a coach, somebody who reminds you of your greatness all along the way. And then we start building it and teasing it out and making it greater and greater and greater. And before you know it, you're like, yeah, I have meaning. I have purpose. Of course I do. That's been my journey. Of course I do. I'm not looking outside of myself anymore. I mean, I don't even remember the day that changed, but I just like recording this episode. I'm like, yeah, I just don't do that. I look within and I say, oh, where am I being too human? Where am I playing too small? Where am I not challenging myself? And then I go out and do it. All right, women, thank you all so much for listening. You are a woman changing leadership. I am so grateful to be your guide, and let's do it again next week. All right, everyone, thanks so much. Bye. Before you go, I have a question for you. Do you know how close you are to your next promotion? Really? Not what your boss has told you, not what you even believe to be true, but have you actually taken the time to sit down, take an assessment, review the 5 categories that it takes to get promoted into senior executive leadership positions and decided where you fall in each category and given yourself a ranking on a scale of 1 to 10 of how close you are to getting your next promotion? Have you done this? Well, now's your chance. If that feels interesting to you and you're like, hey, I want to know exactly how close I might actually be or how far away you might be and what it's going to take to get you even closer, then I invite you to take my promotability quiz. This is a quiz that I put together with practical tips that actually tell you where you're lacking and where you're winning. What are the areas that you actually need to improve and not necessarily what your boss is telling you all the time so that you can take concrete steps towards landing that next promotion and changing the face of the leadership table. Go to yourpromotabilityscore.com to take your free assessment today. Yourpromotabilityscore.com and let me know how it goes.